It began under warm lights and the false comfort of polite laughter, the kind that hides its edge until you feel it cut. Faces I had known for years glowed with the easy confidence of people who believe the night is theirs, their smiles wide, their glasses full, their conversations careless. Outside, the air was colder, sharper, carrying with it something they couldn't sense yet, the weight of a truth waiting at the threshold. Inside, each toast and each joke stacked higher, a tower built on their certainty that the story belonged to them. They didn't see the cracks, didn't feel the shift, didn't notice how the smallest details can tip the balance. By the end, the music would fade, the glasses would still, and the world they'd wrapped themselves in would no longer fit. If you want to step into nights like this, where every glance matters and every word cuts deeper than it seems, like this video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from so I know you're here for the turn. I've learned that when people see the worn jacket, the scuffed shoes, and the bicycle that's been with me longer than some of my relatives have been alive, they stop looking any deeper. That suits me fine. What they don't see, what they never bother to imagine, is the truth I carry in the velvet pouch tucked under the folded scarf in my basket. That pouch is the reason I came tonight. It's the reason the night will not end the way they expect. The venue glows ahead, a grand event hall draped in lights, the entrance flanked by perfectly trimmed hedges. I hear the music from a live band inside and the chatter spilling out every time the glass doors swing open. Laughter reaches me before the words do, and when I'm close enough, I catch a few lines drifting in the cool evening air, small barbs disguised as humor, the kind of thing people say when they believe the target won't mind or won't hear. Jason stands at the door, arm around Lily's waist, the photographer clicking away while guests in tailored suits and glittering dresses mill about. The moment Jason spots me, his gaze dips instantly to my bike, his lips twitching into a grin he doesn't bother to hide. He turns his head slightly toward Lily, who leans in and mutters something. I hear her clearly. That old man is going to ruin the engagement photos. I feel the words land, but I let them settle without reaction, my hands steady as I loop the chain through the bike frame and around the lamppost. The click of the lock echoes sharper than it should, but maybe that's just the silence from those standing nearby. A few guests glance my way, their eyes scanning me head to toe before drifting away as if I'd just been confirmed unworthy of further notice. I step toward the doors, the warmth from inside washing over me as they swing open, but before I can take another step, Carl, my older brother, appears. His smile is tight, his clap on my shoulder too firm to feel welcoming. "Henry," he says, "you could have borrowed my car. No need to make an entrance like that." His gaze lingers on my jacket, the faintest wrinkle appearing in his nose as though the fabric itself offends him. I reply evenly that I like the fresh air. He hums in a way that says he's not listening, already scanning the crowd behind me for someone more worth his attention. Inside, the party is staged like a magazine spread. Chandeliers spill warm light onto polished marble floors, and crystal glasses clink in rhythm with the soft jazz floating from a corner. I step aside to let others pass, watching as they move toward the main hall without so much as a nod in my direction. A server with a tray of champagne flutes passes me twice without offering one, and when Donna finally approaches, she hands me a glass of lukewarm water, her lips pressed into a smile that doesn't reach her eyes. "This will keep you hydrated," she says, glancing briefly toward the champagne table before walking away. Across the room, Jason poses again, Lily's arm wrapped around his as the photographer snaps shot after shot. I catch a few eyes lingering on me from the group near them. Lily's maid of honor and two other women whispering behind manicured hands, their gaze darting toward my scuffed shoes, my calloused fingers gripping the pouch under my arm. The air here is thick with the unspoken rules of their circle. Appearances are everything. Wealth is assumed until proven absent, and absence is something they believe they can smell from across the room. Jason drifts over eventually, a quick smile plastered on his face. "Uncle Henry, glad you made it." He says the words quick and thin. His eyes flick down to the pouch. "You can put your things over there." He gestures toward a side table already cluttered with handbags and coats. I tell him it's better in my care, my tone flat but final. His shoulders rise and fall in a shallow shrug before he's pulled away by another guest. I make my way to the edge of the hall, away from the glittering center, and from here I see everything. I see Peter laughing too hard at something Jason says. I see Carl bending down to whisper in Adana's ear while both glance toward me. And I see the subtle curl of Lily's lip when she notices me watching her. None of them have asked about my life in years. After the first few minutes inside, I notice the subtle patterns. How servers carrying trays of champagne instinctively veer toward the better-dressed guests, while the only drink placed in my hand came from Donna, warm and flat, with a tone that disguised insult as concern. She leans close enough that her perfume, thick and floral, mixes with the faint scent of the fish course being served, and says, "Don't drink too much, Henry. You wouldn't want to, feel out of place later in the evening." Her words drip with politeness on the surface, but each syllable carries the quiet implication that I am already out of place. I thank her without emotion, taking a slow sip, letting her see I'm neither rattled nor impressed. Peter appears then, holding a glass of champagne, the bubbles catching the light like tiny fragments of gold. He gives me a once-over, his eyes lingering on my shoes before smirking. "You didn't get lost on the way here, did you? I figured your kind of GPS is probably one of those paper maps you fold out on the hood of a car." He chuckles at his own joke before taking a sip, looking over my head as though the conversation has already ended. I resist the urge to respond in kind. Peter has always been the sort who mistakes volume for intelligence, and I've learned that silence often unnerves him more than any comeback could. Still, I note the remark in my mind, not because I need the reminder, but because it's another brushstroke in the portrait of arrogance this family insists on painting tonight. The velvet pouch in my hand feels heavier now, not from its contents, but from the knowledge of what's to come. I drift toward a group near the back of the hall where Lily's friends are clustered, their voices rising and falling in waves of feigned excitement. The maid of honor, the same one who heard Lily's comment about me earlier, notices me passing and lowers her voice, but her eyes remain fixed on me, flicking briefly to the pouch before she leans into another woman's ear. The woman glances at me, then away, lips curling into a smile that isn't meant to be friendly. Nearby, Carl is deep in conversation with Jason, both of them glancing in my direction at intervals. Jason's brow furrows once, then smooths, his smile widening for the benefit of the guests surrounding him. He's a performer tonight, playing the role of the perfect host, but I see the cracks, the glances at my bike through the window, the way his eyes narrow when they meet mine. In the center of the room, the photographer is orchestrating a group shot, calling out names and arranging people in neat rows. When it's my turn to be pulled in, Donna steps forward quickly, telling the photographer, "Oh, maybe just the immediate family for this one. Henry can join later." Her voice is smooth, the kind used for rearranging furniture without offending the owner, but I can see the satisfaction in her eyes when I step back. I don't mind. I prefer being at the edges, where I can watch without interruption. A young server offers a tray of hors d'oeuvres to everyone in a cluster nearby, but pivots away just as I reach for one. He doesn't see me as a guest, only as an old man who wandered in from another life. This, I know, is the influence of people like Donna and Peter, the way they set the tone with their comments until even strangers treat me as invisible. Across the room, I catch a glimpse of Emily, my youngest niece, who smiles when she sees me. She starts toward me, but is intercepted by Amber, who hooks an arm through hers and pulls her toward the dessert table, whispering something that makes Emily glance back with a frown. I file the moment away. The pattern is clear now. They've decided I'm here as a curiosity, a subject for whispered observations and subtle snubs, the kind of entertainment that costs them nothing but sharpens their sense of superiority. They don't realize that each glance, each withheld kindness, each carefully chosen word is another stone in the foundation of what's coming. Peter circles back to me once more before dinner begins, holding a shrimp cocktail and wearing the grin of someone who believes he's charming. You know, Henry, he says, I always admire how you keep it simple. No need for all this fancy stuff, right? I end up near the far end, with 3 empty seats between me and the rest of the core family. The space isn't for comfort. It's a polite way of pushing me to the margins while still claiming they included me. The servers set down plates in front of the others first, offering polite smiles and warm greetings. But when they reach me, the tone flattens, the eye contact disappears. I thank them anyway, my voice steady, my hands resting lightly over the velvet pouch on my lap. As the wine is poured, Carl stands, tapping his glass to call for attention. He suggests we go around the table and share a favorite memory of Jason or a meaningful family moment. The idea sounds warm enough, but I know from experience that these moments have a way of becoming opportunities for subtle competition, each person trying to outshine the last with a bigger, better, funnier story. They start at the opposite end, each cousin, aunt, and uncle tossing in anecdotes about vacations, holidays, and shared milestones. My name is absent from every tale. I watch their faces carefully, noting the way their eyes slide over me as though they're stepping around a puddle. I'm not part of their version of family history. By the time it circles back toward my end, I've almost convinced myself they'll skip me entirely, but Jason's grin says otherwise. Oh, I remember one, he says, leaning forward as if about to tell something heartwarming. There was that time Uncle Henry came to Great Aunt May's funeral wearing those brown shoes with actual holes in them. Everyone thought it was a joke. The table bursts into laughter, loud and unrestrained, the sound bouncing off the walls and back into my ears. Even some of the younger guests who weren't there laugh along, eager to be part of the joke. My fork hovers over my plate, unmoving as I let them finish. I don't interrupt, I don't defend myself, and I don't offer any explanation about the real reason those shoes were worn that day. Because the funeral came during a flood, because I had spent the morning helping strangers haul waterlogged belongings from their homes, because the only pair of dry shoes I had at the time had been ruined in the effort. The truth doesn't matter here. The story isn't about me. It's about reinforcing the image they've built. Across from me, Amber, Carl's daughter, has her phone angled just so. She's pretending to scroll, but the lens is pointed toward my hands, resting on the table. I hear the faint click of the camera before she looks down, thumbs flying across the screen. Moments later, her phone buzzes with replies from the family group chat. I can see the reflection of my own hands on her screen, scarred from years of labor, the nails uneven, the knuckles permanently rough. I don't need to read the captions to know they aren't kind. A few seats away, Donna's eyes flicker toward Amber, then toward me, her lips twitching with amusement she tries to mask behind her wine glass. The conversation moves on quickly, but the tone has shifted. I'm no longer just an oddity at the table. I'm the evening's entertainment, a living prop for their wit. They've found a rhythm now. Someone tells a story, someone else adds a jab, and the table ripples with laughter. The more they laugh, the more comfortable they become, like predators realizing their prey won't fight back. I take small bites of my food, letting the flavors register without pleasure. The roasted chicken is tender, the vegetables perfectly seasoned, but the taste is muted under the weight of the room's atmosphere. My mind is elsewhere, cataloging the details, the expressions, the timing, the body language. Jason catches my once mid-laugh, and there's a flash of something, satisfaction, maybe even triumph. To him, this is harmless fun, a way to keep the spotlight while giving everyone a shared target. What he doesn't know is that I've seen this exact pattern before in boardrooms and negotiations, in community disputes and family feuds. The one holding back, the one absorbing the blows without reaction, often has more power than the room realizes. Near the end of the meal, Amber's phone buzzes again, and she snickers before showing it to the cousin beside her. They both glance at me, their shoulders shaking with silent laughter. It would be easy to feel anger here, to let the heat rise in my chest, but I don't give them that satisfaction. Instead, I rest my hands back on the velvet pouch and take a slow drink of water, letting the coolness settle me. The night is still unfolding, and I know there will be more opportunities for them to reveal themselves. The deeper they sink into their own arrogance, the sharper the turn will feel when it comes. As dessert arrives, small, delicate slices of cake served on white porcelain, Emily finally makes her way over. She doesn't say much, just offers me a quiet smile and asks if I need anything. I shake my head, thanking her, and she lingers a moment before returning to her seat. Her kindness is subtle, unnoticed by most, but I make a mental note of it. In a room full of sharpened words and sidelong glances, even the smallest act of genuine respect stands out. When I stand, Donna appears at my elbow, her hand lightly touching my arm in a way that suggests warmth but feels more like a maneuver. "Henry," she says brightly, "we've made room for you over here. We thought you'd enjoy sitting with the kids. Keep them entertained. You know how much they like you." She doesn't wait for my answer before guiding me toward the far corner, where a small round table holds a scattering of crayons, paper placemats, and 3 half-empty glasses of milk. The children, all under 12, glance up briefly before returning to their desserts, oblivious to the quiet slight unfolding around them. Donna sets a chair for me and pats the back of it like she's doing me a kindness. I sit without protest, placing the velvet pouch on my lap beneath the tablecloth. From here, I can still see the main table, where Carl and Peter are deep in conversation with Jason, all 3 of them leaning back in their chairs, laughing with the confidence of men who believe they're in control of the night. I'm not invisible exactly, but I've been placed just far enough away to make participation in their conversations impractical. I can't hear their words clearly, but I can see the way they occasionally glance in my direction, smirking before turning back to their drinks. A server approaches the children's table with a tray of plated entrees, offering each child a small fillet of salmon, garnished and glistening under the warm light. When the tray reaches me, Jason's voice cuts through the noise of the room. "Oh, don't waste the salmon on him," he calls to the caterer, grinning at his own cleverness. "Just give him a chicken leg. He won't know the difference." The people nearest him laugh, some covering their mouths in mock restraint, others openly chuckling. The server hesitates, unsure whether to follow the instruction, but Jason waves his hand in mock authority, and the server, caught between courtesy and compliance, quietly swaps my plate for one bearing a single roasted drumstick with a small scoop of potatoes. I thank the server in a tone meant to carry to the main table. Jason hears me, but doesn't look over. The laughter has already moved on to a new target. The children around me eat quickly, too busy with their food to notice or care about the shift in plates. I take a slow bite, letting the flavors settle, not because I'm hungry, but because the act of eating gives me time to think. I watch the room with the patience of someone who has nothing to prove, but everything to observe. Donna floats from table to table, her hands fluttering as she adjusts silverware, leans in for photos, and whispers into ears. Each time she passes the children's table, she makes a show of checking on me, her voice pitched just loud enough for nearby guests to hear. Having fun over here, Henry? The kids are so lucky to have someone like you to keep them company. It's a performance, and her audience responds with polite smiles, the kind people use when they're agreeing to a script they've been handed. I make no attempt to leave the children's table. The more they believe I've accepted this place, the more convinced they'll be that their control is absolute. That belief will make the shift later all the more jarring. From my vantage point, I catch glimpses of the smaller, private humiliations that fuel their sense of unity. Peter leans across the table to show Jason something on his phone, and Jason bursts out laughing, his shoulders shaking. Whatever's on the screen is quickly tucked away when Carl notices me watching. Carl's eyes meet mine for a fraction of a second before he looks down, reaching for his drink. The music changes to a faster tempo, drawing more guests onto the dance floor. The main table empties, leaving behind half-finished glasses of wine and the faint scent of expensive perfume. I remain seated, my hands resting on the velvet pouch under the table, its weight a reminder of why I'm here. Emily approaches briefly, handing me a folded napkin. "It's quieter near the back if you want to get some air," she says softly, her eyes flicking toward the door. I thank her, but I stay where I am, unwilling to give them the satisfaction of thinking I've been driven out. Instead, I watch the way Jason twirls Lily under the lights, his grin wide, his eyes scanning the crowd for approval. He doesn't notice me, and that's fine. He will. The room hums with the sound of conversation layered over music, punctuated by bursts of laughter from the bar. I'm not surprised when Carl approaches, his gait slow and deliberate, the kind he uses when he's pretending to be magnanimous. He's holding a faded brown jacket over one arm, the kind of thing you'd find at a yard sale in the free bin. "Henry," he says, pulling the jacket off his arm and holding it up like it's a gift. "I noticed you're not wearing much tonight. Thought you might want to keep warm, you know? This one's from my car trunk, still good." I take it in my hands for a moment, and that's when the sharp, chemical smell of gasoline hits me. There's a rip across the back, a jagged tear that looks like it's been there for years. I look up at him, my expression neutral, and say evenly, "I'll pass. I'm fine." He smirks, as if my refusal proves some unspoken point, and shrugs before walking back to his seat. I fold the jacket once, lay it over the back of an empty chair, and return my attention to the crowd. A few minutes later, as I'm moving toward the bar to refill my glass with water, Donna intercepts me in the narrow hallway that leads to the restrooms. She steps in close enough that her perfume crowds the air, her smile too wide to be genuine. "Henry," she begins a low voice, "I've been meaning to ask, have you finally considered selling that old shack you live in? You could get a nice little condo, something respectable, you know? It might help the family's image." Her eyes linger on my jacket, then flick down to my shoes, and I know she's not asking out of concern for my comfort. I meet her gaze without flinching. "I like where I live," I say simply, and try to step past her, but she shifts just enough to block my path for a beat longer. "Well," she says, her tone turning sharper under the sugary surface, "if you change your mind, Jason knows a realtor who could make it happen fast." She pats my arm like she's doing me a favor before stepping aside. I walk past without looking back, my grip tightening on the pouch under my arm. When I return to the main room, the energy has shifted slightly. The laughter is still there, the clinking of glasses still steady, but there's an undercurrent now, a kind of restless movement among certain guests. I catch Peter at the bar, glancing toward me while speaking to two of Jason's friends. They all laugh, though none of them look directly at me afterward. I can guess the topic without hearing the words. Emily spots me from across the room and heads over, holding two small plates of fruit. She offers one to me without a word. It's a simple gesture, but it cuts through the noise of the evening like fresh air in a stale room. I thank her, and she gives me a small smile before returning to her friends. I eat slowly, my eyes scanning the room for patterns. Carl is back at the main table, the gasoline-scented jacket draped over the back of his chair like a trophy. Donna is seated beside Lily now, leaning in to whisper something that makes Lily glance toward me with a look halfway between curiosity and disdain. Jason has moved to the dance floor again, pulling Lily into another spin for the photographer. Every so often, his eyes sweep the room, pausing just a fraction too long when they land on me. I know that look. It's the look of someone measuring how much longer they need to entertain their guest before they can dismiss them entirely. A young server passes by with a tray of wine, offering it to everyone in my vicinity, but skipping me without breaking stride. I watch him circle the room, stopping at each cluster of guests, never once making eye contact with me. This, I know, is the ripple effect, small signals from people like Carl and Donna that tell others I'm not worth their time. I'll let it happen. Every act of false kindness, every calculated slight, is another brick in the wall they're building between themselves and the truth. Jason is one of those people. He knows how to draw the spotlight, and tonight he's determined to keep it, even if it means using me as a prop for another performance. I watch him cross the floor to the tall windows that look out toward the street. My bicycle is still chained to the lamppost, a small, unassuming shape against the gold light spilling from the hall. Jason gestures toward it with exaggerated surprise, calling out to a group nearby. Hey, who parked the antique outside? We should bring it in for everyone to see. Laughter ripples through the group, and before I can move or speak, Jason is already pulling a chair to the center of the room, standing on it like an auctioneer at a county fair. Ladies and gentlemen, he announces, raising his voice so it cuts through the music. We have here tonight a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, a genuine classic, vintage piece of scrap metal. The group around him laughs louder, and more guests turn to look, drawn by the commotion. Bidding starts at $1, he says, pointing toward the window, for the fine two-wheeled chariot parked just outside. Lightly rusted, occasionally squeaks, comes with a free basket. A few hands go up jokingly. $1, someone calls. $2, another adds, and the room roars with amusement. I don't move from my place, my hand resting lightly on the velvet pouch under my arm, my expression unreadable. The auction continues for a minute, climbing all the way to an exaggerated $10 before Jason bows theatrically and declares the sale closed. The group disperses, still chuckling, and Jason steps down from the chair with a smirk. He catches my eye briefly, a silent question hanging there. Are you going to react? I don't. He shrugs and turns away, satisfied with the attention he's drawn. I'm just starting to step away from the pillar when Peter sidles up beside me, his breath warm with the smell of wine. He pats me on the shoulder like we're old friends sharing a private joke, then slips his hand into the front pocket of my jacket. When he pulls it back, I feel the weight of a crumpled bill left behind. $5, he says, his grin wide and careless. So you can grab a bus if you get tired on the way home. Wouldn't want you collapsing halfway, right? He walks away without waiting for a reply, his laughter joining the din at the bar. I reach into my pocket, pull out the bill, and hold it between my fingers for a moment before folding it and placing it inside the velvet pouch. Not because I need it, but because everything they give me tonight, whether insult or object, will be accounted for. The air feels heavier now, not from the warmth of the crowd, but from the quiet certainty that they've crossed a threshold they can't step back over. Before, the slights were veiled, the jokes indirect enough to leave them room for denial. Now, the humiliation is public, deliberate, and shared by multiple voices. I scan the room and catch Emily watching me from near the dessert table, her brow slightly furrowed. She doesn't come over, but her eyes meet mine in a way that says she saw everything. The band shifts songs again, the lighting softens, and the guests slip back into their own small worlds as if nothing happened. But the mood around me is different now. Some avoid my gaze entirely, while others glance over with a faint, lingering smile of someone who's just witnessed something they believe they were meant to enjoy. I take a slow breath, let the noise fade into the background, and remind myself that every moment they spend laughing at me now will echo twice as loud when the night turns. A server passes by with a tray of fresh drinks, and this time, without hesitation, I reach out and take one. The young man looks startled but doesn't object. I sip slowly, letting the cold drink wash away the last trace of bitterness from Peter's remark. A tall figure steps in, the kind that draws attention without demanding it, Mr. Bradley. His presence is deliberate, from the way his shoes hit the marble with quiet certainty to the slight pause he takes at the threshold, scanning the room with a gaze that misses nothing. The suit he wears is charcoal, perfectly tailored, a subtle contrast to the glitter and flash around him. His eyes meet mine for the briefest moment, and then he starts forward, cutting through the space between guests without hesitation. Conversations falter as he passes, the flow of movement in the room bending around him like a current diverted by stone. Without greeting anyone, without offering explanation, he stops in front of me. His expression is unreadable as he extends his hand, palm open. I place the velvet pouch into it without ceremony. The transfer is smooth, practiced, as if we've done this 100 times before. Mr. Bradley turns, takes 3 measured steps toward the nearest unoccupied table in the center of the room, and sets the pouch down on its polished surface. He doesn't touch the clasp yet. Instead, he rests one hand lightly over the top and lets his eyes travel the room again. Donna, who has been hovering near the dance floor, notices him and lets out a small, too bright laugh, striding forward with the confidence of someone who believes charm can erase any tension. "Is that your rent money, Henry?" she says, her tone sharp under the sugar, the words aimed at the pouch as though it were an old shoebox of unpaid bills. A few people nearby chuckle under their breath, but the sound dies quickly when Mr. Bradley turns his head toward her. He doesn't speak, but the slight arch of his eyebrow is enough to press the air out of the moment. Donna stops mid-step, her smile stiffening, and her hands drift to clasp in front of her. Mr. Bradley then speaks for the first time, his voice calm, but carrying easily over the music. "This will be quick," he says, glancing toward the band. The music fades to a low murmur as the musicians exchange uncertain looks. Jason, who has been at the bar, notices the shift in the room and walks over, his brow creased in faint confusion. "Something going on?" he asks, trying to keep his tone casual. "Yes," Mr. Bradley replies, looking at Jason without blinking. "Something important." He doesn't elaborate, and the lack of immediate explanation makes the crowd lean in slightly, their curiosity pricked. I stay where I am, my posture steady, letting Mr. Bradley control the tempo. His presence changes the energy. People who moments ago were comfortable enough to mock me openly now glance between him and me, trying to piece together a connection. Peter drifts closer, his wine glass half raised, his grin uncertain for the first time all evening. Carl appears beside Donna, his hand resting on her elbow like a subtle anchor. Mr. Bradley takes his time, adjusting the pouch so it sits squarely on the table. His fingers brush over the clasp, but he still doesn't open it. Instead, he asks, "How many of you are related to Mr. Collins?" Hands go up, some tentative, some high with the reflex of claiming association before understanding why the question matters. Good, he says, and then he nods toward me. You may want to pay close attention to what happens next. A ripple of unease moves through the group. Lily, standing a few steps behind Jason, tilts her head, her smile faint but strained. The quiet in the room is different now. Not the polite stillness of listening to a speech, but the tense anticipation of people who sense the ground might be shifting. Mr. Bradley finally opens the pouch, not quickly, but with deliberate care, drawing out the moment. The clasp clicks softly, a sound that seems to carry farther than it should. He doesn't reveal the contents yet, keeping them shielded from view as his gaze sweeps the room one last time. Everything in here, he says evenly, represents choices. Mr. Collins's choices made over a lifetime. His eyes rest briefly on Jason, then Peter, then Donna, before returning to me. And tonight, those choices will become very clear to everyone in this room. He closes the pouch without showing what's inside and steps back, leaving it on the table in plain sight. The fact that he doesn't guard it closely seems to unsettle some of them more than if he had kept it in his grip. It sits there now like an unspoken question, drawing the eyes of anyone who passes. I can feel the weight of their glances shift from the pouch to me and back again. Mr. Bradley keeps his hand resting on the velvet pouch for a moment longer, then glances at me briefly before straightening and addressing the crowd. His voice is steady and unhurried, cutting cleanly through the low music in the background. Ladies and gentlemen, he begins, I'm here tonight on behalf of Mr. Henry Collins. My purpose is straightforward, to finalize his estate transfer. Several of you in this room will be directly impacted by what I'm about to share. The effect is immediate. Conversations stop mid-sentence, glasses freeze halfway to lips, and every head turns either toward him or toward me. The guests who are still holding onto a trace of amusement from earlier now were expressions ranging from cautious curiosity to thinly veiled anxiety. Jason laughs once, short and strained, and says, Estate transfer? For Henry. His tone carries the same disbelief as someone hearing a cat had bought a yacht. Mr. Bradley doesn't respond to the remark. Instead, he opens the pouch with the same deliberate care as before and reaches inside. He draws out a thin leather portfolio, placing it beside the pouch, and from it removes a stack of glossy photographs. Without rushing, he lays the top photo on the table for all to see. Me, dressed in a tailored Navy business suit, shaking hands with a man whose face many in the room recognize from local news coverage of major real estate deals. A murmur ripples through the crowd, small and disjointed at first, then growing as recognition spreads. He sets down the next photo, me sitting at a long polished conference table, flanked by two attorneys and a woman from a well-known development firm, a pen in my hand poised over a thick document. Another photo follows, me standing in front of a large property map, pointing towards shaded parcels in 3 different states, the kind of image used in investment briefings. For over 30 years, Mr. Bradley says evenly, Mr. Collins has maintained substantial investments in land, commercial buildings, and residential developments. These holdings are not minor. They're spread across 3 states, with a combined value in the millions. He flips open a manila folder and begins to lay out copies of tax records, property deeds, and financial summaries. The documents are neatly tabbed, every figure highlighted for clarity. Numbers jump off the page, 7 digits here, 8 digits there, each one another nail in the coffin of the assumptions they've made about me. The silence in the room deepens, but it's no longer the comfortable silence of polite listening. It's taut, brittle, waiting for the next piece to drop. Peter shifts his weight from one foot to the other, his earlier smirk gone, his eyes flicking between the papers and my face as if trying to reconcile two different realities. Donna's lips press into a thin line. The color drains slightly from her cheeks. Carl stares at the documents without blinking, his jaw set, though I can see the faint pulse beating at his temple. Jason forces a laugh again, this time louder, as if volume could make it believable. "Come on, this has to be some kind of joke," he says, looking around for agreement. But no one joins him. Mr. Bradley's tone remains calm, almost detached as he continues. "The decision about these assets was made long before tonight, but tonight is when the terms will be revealed to those they affect. Every person in this room has played some part in Mr. Collins's life, whether positive or negative, and those roles have been remembered." He closes the folder, leaving the documents on display, and places both hands lightly on the table's edge. The guests closest to him lean in slightly, their faces taut with the kind of attention usually reserved for verdicts and confessions. The photographs line a neat row, each one another quiet rebuke to the version of me they've been laughing at all evening. I stand where I've been the entire time, my posture unchanged, my expression still calm. I can feel their eyes on me now in a way that's entirely different from earlier. Before, their looks were filled with judgment and condescension. Now they carry calculation, curiosity, even the first traces of unease. Emily stands a little apart from the others, her gaze fixed not on the documents but on my face, and in her expression I see understanding beginning to form. She has never mocked me, never tried to diminish me, and I suspect she already senses where this is headed. Jason runs a hand through his hair, glancing at Lily, who shrugs, her eyes still on the photographs. Donna takes a step forward, opening her mouth as if to speak, but Mr. Bradley's slight tilt of the head keeps her silent. The balance in the room has shifted so completely that even the lighting feels different, sharper, less forgiving. Mr. Bradley lets the weight of it sit for a few seconds, scanning the room, his gaze deliberate and unwavering. Then he places one hand on the leather portfolio again and says, "Before I move on to the final terms, there's something you should all know. Mr. Collins has been documenting interactions with his family for the past 3 years. Every slight, every insult, every time he was dismissed or treated with contempt, it's all here." He taps the folder, the sound crisp against the wood table, and the ripple it sends through the guests is almost physical. Donna stiffens, her eyes narrowing slightly, while Peter swallows hard and shifts his stance. Jason crosses his arms, a forced grin tugging at his lips, but his jaw is tight. Mr. Bradley continues, "These aren't vague recollections. They are detailed records, dates, times, locations, and in many cases, corroborating witnesses. There are even instances where photographs, text messages, or social media posts serve as direct evidence." He opens the folder and pulls out several stapled packets of paper, fanning them out so the nearest guest can see the meticulous formatting. Names in bold, entries numbered, each one describing a specific moment. For example, he says, glancing at one page, "November 12th, 3 years ago, engagement party for Carl's co-worker. Mr. Collins was told there was no room for him at the main table, then given a folding chair near the kitchen door." Donna made a comment about his thrift store wardrobe within earshot of 6 guests. Witnesses, Mark, Lydia, and Claire. Confirmation, text exchange between Donna and Lydia, obtained with permission. The air seems to contract with every example. The glossy confidence in the room has dulled to a matte finish. Faces tightening as the reality of their behavior is read aloud, stripped of the protective layer of humor they always wrapped it in. He flips to another page. "June 4th, 2 years ago, Jason's backyard barbecue. Mr. Collins arrives with a homemade pie. Peter makes a remark about bringing poverty to the table and later posts a photo of the pie on Instagram with a caption, "When dessert matches your paycheck." Witnesses: Amber, Jason, and Michael. Confirmation: screenshot attached. Jason's grin falters entirely now, and Peter looks down at the floor. No one laughs. Mr. Bradley closes the folder, but leaves it on the table as if to remind them the evidence isn't going anywhere. Then he says, "Every person in this room except one appears in this log. Every single one of you, at some point in the last 3 years, chose mockery over respect." He lets the statement hang, letting their eyes dart around the room, silently taking inventory of who's implicated, which is nearly everyone. "The one person who doesn't appear here," he continues, "is Emily." Heads turn toward her. She blinks, startled by the attention, then straightens in her seat, her face open but cautious. "Emily," Mr. Bradley says, "is the only one who, in 3 years of documented interactions, has never insulted or belittled her uncle. She is the only one who, on a rainy afternoon last spring, biked across town to help him carry groceries home when his basket broke. No one asked her to do it. No one knew about it until he told me. And he didn't tell me for praise. He told me because it stood out in contrast to nearly everything else in this record." I watch Emily's eyes widen slightly, her mouth parting as if to speak, then closing again. Her hands are folded tightly in her lap, but there's no tension in her face, only the faint tremor of someone caught between disbelief and gratitude. Around her, the mood shifts sharply. Donna's eyebrows shoot up, her gaze snapping between Emily and Mr. Bradley. Jason's brow furrows, a frown forming as he begins to understand the direction of this conversation. Peter lets out a low breath, his shoulders sagging. "The terms of the estate," Mr. Bradley says, his tone as steady as it was at the start, "are as follows. All assets, real estate, investments, liquid accounts will pass to Emily Collins. There will be no division, no partial shares, no secondary beneficiaries. Every property deed, every financial account, every holding in Mr. Collins's name will transfer to her in full." The silence breaks, not with applause or cheers, but with a sharp intake of breath from somewhere in the back. Donna takes a half step forward, her voice rising. "That's absurd," but Mr. Bradley holds up a hand, cutting her off without raising his voice. "It's legal. It's final. And it's exactly as Mr. Collins instructed." Jason exhales hard through his nose, a bitter laugh escaping him. "So this is what tonight was about," he says, his tone edged with resentment. "Dragging us all here just to humiliate us. I speak for the first time since this began, my voice low but clear enough to carry. No, I say, I didn't drag you here. You invited me. All I did was show you the cost of how you've treated me." Every eye is locked on Emily as he reaches into the pouch and produces a polished wooden box. He sets it before her, opens it, and reveals a set of keys on a silver ring, their metal catching the light like small bursts of fire. "These," he says, "are for the lakefront estate in Vermont. You'll find the deed inside as well." He hands her a thick envelope sealed in red wax, then slides a stack of bound documents across the table. "This is the transfer paperwork for the properties in Illinois, Colorado, and Florida. Your name is now on every title. And here," he lifts a single leather-bound folder, "are the trust fund documents, totaling just over $6 million in liquid assets. You are sole beneficiary." Emily's hands tremble as she takes the keys, her face pale, her lips parting but no words emerging. Around her, the others stand frozen, their expressions a spectrum of disbelief, rage, and dawning regret. Donna, who had been standing closest to the bar, takes a half step forward, the color draining from her face. Her champagne flute slips from her hand and hits the marble floor with a sharp, crystalline crack, shattering into glittering shards that scatter underfoot. The sound seems to snap a few people out of their stupor. Peter mutters something under his breath. Carl exhales a slow, defeated sigh, and Jason just stares, jaw tight, his mind racing behind his eyes. "This can't be legal," Donna says finally, her voice too high, too sharp, as if she's trying to claw her way back into control. Mr. Bradley doesn't even look at her. "It's legal and final," he says, his tone making it clear there will be no further debate. I step forward, my gaze moving across the faces of people who have spent the evening treating me as if I were less than them, who built their comfort on the belief that I had nothing they wanted. I begin, my voice steady. I thought about keeping this quiet. I could have signed the papers, made the transfers, and let you all go on thinking the way you do. But then I realized something. You've taught me, over and over again, that the way you treat someone when you believe they have nothing is the truest measure of who you are. And I wanted you to see that measure in full. My eyes settle briefly on Jason, then on Donna, then on Peter. None of them can hold my gaze for more than a heartbeat. I didn't do this to punish you. I continue. I did it to reward the one person who acted with decency when there was no reward in sight. Emily's eyes glisten now, the weight of the moment pressing against her in ways money can't explain. She stands slowly, clutching the keys, and meets my gaze. "Thank you," she says quietly, but in the silence that follows, her voice carries like a bell. I nod once. "You earned it," I tell her. Behind her, Donna's hands are clenched into fists at her sides. Carl's lips are pressed into a hard line, and Peter looks away, shame written plainly across his face. Jason doesn't move at all. He just stares, the reality settling in that the empire he assumed he'd inherit has slipped away in a single evening. Mr. Bradley gathers the remaining documents, closes the pouch, and hands it back to me. "That's all," he says simply, stepping away from the table. The guests begin to drift toward the exits, their conversations hushed, their movements mechanical, as if the floor has shifted beneath them and they're still trying to find balance. No one approaches me to apologize. No one dares to argue further. They know, deep down, that the ink on those documents isn't just legal, it's moral. I pick up my coat from the back of the chair, slide the pouch under my arm, and make my way toward the door. The cold night air greets me with a clarity the room could never hold. Outside, the lamppost casts a pale light over my bicycle, still chained where I left it. I unlock it, the chain rattling softly, and the sound feels cleaner than anything I've heard all evening. As I wheel it toward the street, the small bell on the handlebars gives a light chime, carried away by the night wind. Behind me, through the tall windows of the hall, I can see their silhouettes, still gathered in small knots, their heads bent together, their movements sharp and unsettled. They look smaller now, not because I've grown, but because they've been forced to see themselves without the comfort of superiority. I swing my leg over the bike and start a pedal, the streetlights passing overhead in long, even intervals. Each turn of the wheel feels lighter than the last, not because the road is easier, but because I've left the weight of their expectations behind. The end. If you stayed with me through the whole story, I'd like to hear what you think. Did the way the night unfolded catch you off guard? Which moment hit you the hardest? The mock auction, the velvet pouch on the table, or the final reveal? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from so I can see how far this story traveled. And if you want to hear more stories like this, the kind that dig deep into pride, respect, and how people show their true selves when they think no one is watching, make sure you subscribe and give us a like so I know you're out there listening. Your feedback shapes the next chapter one tell.